Welcome to the United States of Small Business, a podcast where the essence of American entrepreneurship is celebrated in every episode. With host John Quick at the helm, join us as we embark on a journey through the heart of the nation, uncovering the inspiring stories of small business owners from coast to coast. Experience the vibrant energy of bustling cities and the serene beauty of small towns, all while discovering how individuals are turning their entrepreneurial dreams into reality, even against the greatest odds. Each episode brings you face to face with the dreamers, creators, and doers who form the economic backbone of our country, all sharing their spirit of innovation and resilience. Whether you are in the early stages of sowing the seeds for your own business, scaling new heights in your current venture, or simply captivated by tales of grit and triumph, you are in the right place. Tune in on platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and beyond. For deeper insights and to connect with the heart and soul of America's main streets, visit UnitedStatesOfSmallBusiness.com. Subscribe to United States of Small Business with host John Quick now and be inspired by the powerful stories of entrepreneurship, community, and the unwavering pursuit of the American dream. Begin your journey of inspiration with us today.
Welcome to the United States of Small Business podcast, where we delve into the strategies and stories behind some of today's most influential people. I'm your host, John Quick. In this episode, we're joined by Kyle Meow, founder and CEO of Hire UA, a dynamic firm that specializes in helping businesses across the U.S. outsource critical functions like live chat support, graphic design, and much more. Kyle will share how Hire UA has become a leader in optimizing business processes through outsourcing, the lessons he's learned building a versatile outsourcing firm, and his insights on why more companies are turning to specialized external teams to enhance efficiency and focus on core operations. Whether you're looking to streamline your business or just curious about the benefits of outsourcing, this conversation with Kyle is sure to provide valuable insight. So without further adu, Kyle, welcome to the United States of Small Business podcast.
Thank you for having me, John. I appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Well, this will be fun. It'll be fun to hear a little bit about your story and how your business is helping lots of entrepreneurs. But first, tell me what inspired you to start Hire UA. I think everybody's kind of got their story. I'd love to hear yours.
It really just started because I was living in Ukraine. I lived there for about 5 years, and I actually hired somebody just to be an assistant on the ground there. And then I kind of realized she's really good and really talented. So it kind of gave me this jumping off point to say, hey, maybe there's a place for us to interrupt the traditional markets like the Philippines and India and just try something different. And we've now been able to place hundreds of people into businesses. And I think that's, really held true. We've been able to place good people that have had a unique perspective. We'll put it that way.
That's awesome. So what does your typical client look like? They're coming to you with maybe challenges that they have in their business. Mm-hmm. What does that kind of onboarding process look like? What could somebody expect if they're interested in maybe using some of your services?
So it all starts obviously just with a quick discovery call and kind of figuring out what your business is and what your needs are. We like to dive in and actually make sure, especially if you're a small business, that you're hiring for the right role. A lot of people think they might need to hire for something, but then when you say, okay, have you audited your time for a couple of days? And then what they actually need is something completely different from that. So it's really important that you understand what you need, what you like doing in your business, and also what's high value in your business, what's actually going to put money in your pocket. So that's where it all kind of starts. And then from there, if we were going to move forward, we would basically write the job description for you, get your approval, and then we would start scheduling candidates on your calendar in 5 days. So less than a week. And then after that, you'll likely pick somebody and move forward with them.
And my guess is there's probably some significant savings and dollar wise. Talk to me a little bit about that. Somebody that's going to maybe hire a full-time person with, a bunch of degrees in New York City, or potentially hire somebody from you. There's probably a differentiation of price, probably not so much service, but probably price.
It's on average about 70 to 80%. So I think, a good example is like my executive assistant who runs, my entire life across multiple companies. Probably if you were in New York City at a major company, you'd probably be paying her $200,000 a year. And I'm not going to disclose how much I'm paying her, but it's a lot less than that. So yeah, it's a huge price differential. And as well as the attitude, I think, A lot of small businesses in America have really found over the last few years, it's hard to get the good help. Everyone wants a higher minimum wage, a higher salary, more benefits, and they just seem to, not have the right attitude in a lot of cases. So I think that's just as important as well as obviously the cost savings.
Yeah. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, when you first started the business, and how did you overcome those?
I think the biggest challenge was that people just had no idea that this region of the world was actually a possibility. So, in a lot of ways, we had to educate people on an emerging market as opposed to them always just kind of going back to the traditional places, like I mentioned before. So, educating them about that was a big challenge and has continued to be a challenge in some ways. But once people start to see, the kind of candidates and the resumes that we're giving to them for interviews and then placing into their business, then it gets a lot easier from that. As the company has grown, we have a lot of case studies, a lot of testimonials, and obviously, when you have that, everything becomes a lot easier just as far as closing deals and doing business. So it's less of a hurdle than it used to be for sure.
Nice. So let's say there's, we have a lot of folks that listen to this that own small businesses across the US, even brick and
Mhm.
mortar, folks that own a couple coffee shops or something like that. Tangibly and practically, what are some of those tasks that somebody uh, that works for you or is a client of yours could do for somebody that owns a couple coffee shops? Give us a practical kind of peek under the hood of, you know,
Mhm.
that coffee shop owner probably is running around like a chicken with their head cut off,
Yeah.
thinking about social media stuff. It's probably the last thing they think about. What are some of those things that um, you and your folks could do for that person?
Let me use an example of one of our clients who is a tire distributor in Florida. Not a
Nice.
business that you would think like we're going to hire people abroad, but they came to us from a referral and they now have an operations manager, a virtual assistant, and a data specialist analyst who goes through and compiles all their reports and, makes them all into pretty graphs and everything else. So that's something that you would not think is a business that's going to hire people from abroad. So you have to be creative, but it can be done. In the case of the coffee shop owner, like you said, social media, answering questions, getting people to maybe leave reviews. You could do all sorts of tasks that if you audited your time and saw, like you said, running around like a chicken, that you're doing 50 different things a day, you could start to say, well, out of these 50 things, could I give someone 20 of them? And the answer is you probably could. So for the coffee shop, like you said, social media, accounting, perhaps just compiling books, general admin stuff, emails, all of those right off the bat are things that come to my mind that a coffee shop owner, would never hire someone locally to do that. It'd be far too expensive, but you could easily do it for under $10 an hour abroad.
Nice. So, who's somebody that you've been pretty successful? You've had a number of different businesses. We were chatting a little bit before the podcast that you had your own podcast. Who's somebody that you've looked up to in this space, and maybe been a hero to you, and why?
I honestly really like Steve Jobs. I think the way that he did Apple and produced products is really the way that a lot of business owners should be doing it. So, to give an example, when he would design products, he understood that he was the visionary and it was his idea. So, he would use kind of like a basically, he'd go in for the first part of the product. And then he'd step away and say, "Hey guys, this is the vision. You go execute it." And then he would come back in, as the brilliant guy and put all the nice finishing touches and make it all beautiful. So I think that's the way a lot of business owners should be thinking. Instead of doing everything yourself, hire the right people who are better than you are in many ways at that task. And then if you need to, come back in and put your kind of final flourish on it. And I think the way that Steve Jobs did it is very good. He was crazy in some other ways for sure, but I like the way he did that.
I like that. Yeah, he invented a lot of really cool things that I think we'll look back on and will be, game changers in his era. Obviously, iPhone and the iPods and all those kinds of things. So, quite a
Yeah,
cool
already a
person to
game
look up
changer.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so what's your philosophy on hiring? You have to probably hire a lot of people that are going to be working for high caliber folks. So what is your approach or philosophy on hiring people? I think that some insights there would be very awesome because folks that own businesses all across the U.S. they have to hire people as well, and so oftentimes it's knee jerk reaction. Oh crap! I
Mhm.
got trying to put out one fire at a time. So what's your philosophy on hiring folks?
Number one, never ever rush it. Always be patient. If you're not excited to hire somebody, like just don't hire them. It will never work out how you hope it to. The second thing would be don't judge someone by the piece of paper because more than likely you probably don't use your college degree either. It's better to have the right person with the right attitude and the belief in your company than it is to have someone who has the right qualifications but doesn't have those other intangibles. And the last thing that I think is really important is to not punish people for being like intelligent and getting stuff done quickly. So I always like to ask this question of, at your last job, was it an 8-hour day? And people will typically say like, yes. And I say, okay, but how much of that day did you actually work? And of course, at first they start to say like, they don't know how to answer this question. And then eventually the good ones come out and they're honest. They're like, oh, like 2 or 3 hours. And I say, great, you're the person I want. Because I want the person who can do the 8-hour job in 2 hours. Because I don't care if it takes them, I don't need them sitting there all day in a lot of cases. I just need them to get the job done. So if they can do it in a quarter of the time, great. Let's move forward. That's someone who I want on the team. So those are kind of three things that I really look at.
Nice. What about AI? Has that changed the way this space works? Or has AI helped you grow faster, or has it been a detriment?
I don't think we've probably lost a couple people whose roles have been taken by AI. I would guess it's probably less than half a dozen. I think the position that's going to become more popular in the coming years is people who can prompt AI properly. So someone who can actually use it and absolutely maximize AI. As of now, I think it's still kind of hasn't taken over a lot of jobs, but I think it's going to continue to. And I think a lot of people who are working online, you should at least be preparing to learn how to use it. If you can make yourself better at your job by using I think it actually reduces the chance of you losing your position in that case.
Yeah. Well, you've done this successfully for a number of years. What's one of the biggest lessons you've learned along the way? And maybe wasn't fun in the middle of the lesson, but glad you went through it.
Business partners, really, really tough. It's basically like a marriage. So I would say if you're not like really sure that you want to be a business partner with someone, if you wouldn't like marry them, then it's probably something you should really reconsider. And like breaking up with a business partner is just as messy as a divorce in many cases. And I've been fortunate that I've never really had one that's been messy. But at the end of the day, you really need to have defined roles and figure out like who's going to do what. And there needs to be accountability and expectations. So that was probably the bigger mistake. Not that I had business partners, but that it wasn't defined who was going to do what and what the expectations from each side were. Because then when someone's not meeting your expectations, but you never actually had a conversation about them, then there's this huge disconnect and nobody's ultimately happy. So that's what I would really take away is make sure that your expectations are very, very clear.
Nice. How important do you think it is for folks to be networking, as business owners, small business owners? Oftentimes they just get trapped in their silo and look up to breathe for a second and then go back to work. How important it is to, hang out with other like-minded folks. How important that is that for you?
There's a phrase I heard just a couple weeks ago, and it was your network is your net worth. And I actually think that's really, really accurate. It's not only because you want to sell within your network, but it's also like as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, just having people that you can bounce things off of and go to and talk to instead of just burying your head down in the sand. It really makes it easier. So when you have a like-minded group that you can share the struggles with and, get bounce some ideas, get some feedback on your problems, it really makes the whole journey a lot easier. And I mean, to be honest, like entrepreneurship is just not an easy journey. There's just so many ups and downs all the time that trying to go through it without actually talking to other people going through it is, to me, it's kind of crazy. Like you'll drive yourself insane, I think.
Yeah. So what's advice? You probably talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. The nature of your business probably helps that happen. What's some advice, practical advice you just would give to entrepreneurs out there, maybe that haven't, maybe aspiring entrepreneurs who haven't took that first step? Maybe they're scared to take the first step. I think the first step is often the hardest step to take. What's some advice you give to folks that are, just waiting around to take that first step for the perfect timing? Oftentimes that perfect timing never happens. So
the biggest piece of advice I could give to people who are looking to start would be that the regret is worse than doing it. And I always like a good example of this is that if you see like a cute girl at the bar, you always regret not talking to her. You're not going to regret, no matter how badly she rejects you, you're not going to regret that you did it. And it like starting a business or taking that leap of faith is like the same exact thing. You are going to feel so much worse if you don't do it than if you try and fail. So regret's far worse than failure. And I would use that as your fuel to get going. I think also the piece of advice I would give is that you don't need to overcomplicate things. You don't need something like super innovative and crazy. You don't need to have just be doing anything wild. Stick to the basics, come up with solve someone's problem. That's really all that business is. Solve someone's problem, charge a reasonable amount for it, do a good job, ask them for feedback or a testimonial. And that like it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that.
Nice. So what's the long-term goal for you in the business? Um, do you have any huge aspirational goals with this business in particular, or other businesses that you want to start down the road? What's some of your long-term goals?
We are working on a software division of the company. So that is kind of my goal. Mission wise, too, obviously, we are helping people in Ukraine who have been displaced or are still going through the situation with the war. So the more people we can help, the better. I'd like to see us, employing over 1,000 people at some point. That would be the goal that we've done. And also, it's nice that we get to help the other side of it too. So, help 1,000 people. Also, let's help 1,000 small businesses too, because people in the States running small businesses are getting the short end of the stick, all the time. It's this regulation, this tax, we're just going to make everything more difficult for you. And I think it sucks. Small business is the backbone of the economy. That's kind of the lip service a lot of the politicians pay, but they don't, that's not how they actually come down and do it. They don't actually execute on those words. So, let's help everybody. That's the way I look at it.
Nice. So where can people are going to be listening to this thinking, man, I got to check this guy out and check out his website and find him on social. So where can folks find you? What's the easiest way for a business to check you out and get up, tell us
Yeah,
all those details.
of course. So if you go to hire-ua.com and you're a business owner looking to hire, you can click one of the buttons and book a call with the team, or go to hire-ua.com/email. And I send out a daily email for business owners about life abroad, building a team, being a good leader for your company, and pretty much anything else that's on your mind. And you can just kind of search Kyle Mao around social channels and you'll find me around there.
Nice. Well, Kyle, 20 minutes has gone by in a flash here. Any last minute thoughts here before we head off?
Really, I would just say to add on to what I was saying earlier is that perseverance is by far the most critical attribute of being an entrepreneur, whether you are actually in a business now or thinking to start one. And at the end of the day, understand that things come and go in cycles. And the better that you can stomach those cycles, the more likely you're going to make it and the more likely that you're going to be successful in the long term. So keep that in mind.
Awesome. Well, folks listening in, if you just got the tail end here, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the whole thing. Kyle shed some amazing insight on really helping small businesses and other businesses around the U.S. with tasks like social media manager, data management, and the list goes on and on. So I want to encourage you all to go check out hire-ua.com. And Kyle is helping businesses all over the U.S. accomplish some of these tasks. So kudos to you, Kyle. Wish you nothing but success here from the United States of Small Business Podcast. And folks, I'll put all the links in the podcast description for you to check out. And until next time, I'm John Quick from the United States of Small Business Podcast. Thanks so much, Kyle, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it, John.